Okay, it's going to be an ROH Classic review of Generation Next. So this is where, one of the most legendary stables in the history of professional wrestling was formed. I would actually say probably the most talented stable as far as in-ring workers was formed on this night. So the name of the show is actually called Generation Next, as the stable of Austin Aries, Alex Shelley, Roderick Strong, and Jack Evans hijacked the show, hijacked the name of the show. Originally, this was supposed to be a series of matches featuring younger talents like Jimmy Jacobs and Nigel McGuinness was, one of those matches. But yeah, this is where they really made a name for themselves, and history was made. So we're going all the way back to May 22nd of 2004. This is from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Originally, this was supposed to be in the Pennsylvania National Guard Armory, but because of the war with Iraq, the troops had to stay down and stay at that arena. So this was actually inside of a tent, which definitely sucks. I think the tent looks like shit on television, on camera. The good thing is, though, as the show got darker, it looked a little bit better. But, it didn't really take away from the show too much. There has been situations in the past where Ring of Honor has had some incredible shows inside of a tent. Glory by Honor 5 Night 1 with Kenta taking on the Briscoes. That was inside of a tent. There was a show called Destiny featuring Bryan Danielson and Homicide, which unfortunately had to be inside of a tent. But, not the worst thing in the world. I don't want to say that the tent destroyed the show, because it really didn't. So yeah, man, if anyone hasn't seen it yet, check out Cage Match. I don't know why I didn't find this sooner, but this is like a Wikipedia for independent wrestling shows. Hero actually talked about this as well on one of his High Spots interviews. So if anyone needs to find a Wikipedia that really caters to independent wrestling, definitely check out Cage Match. So yeah, the attendance here is only 350. The pay-per-view buy rate, only 500 DVD sales. No, I'm just joking about that. But yeah, 350 inside of a tent. On commentary, we got Chris Lovey, who's actually Gabe Sapolsky. And then we have Mark Nolte on commentary here. But yeah, man, I want to talk about Generation Next before we get it, started with the review right here. I think it's an incredible stable. So if you're an Alex Shelley fan, if you're an Austin Aries fan, this is a must-see show. This is probably the highlight of Alex Shelley's life. This show, to be able to lead a stable, have good matches, and just cut promos throughout this whole show. So the show actually starts off with them beating up the Christopher Street Connection, which is actually that they're actually a gay tag team. So they beat them up, they hijack the show, and then they have a trios match against Special K featuring Angel Dust, Dixie, and Izzy. I thought there was a little bit too much selling here from Generation X. I just feel like if you really want to put over this heel stable as dominant, I really thought this should have been more of a squash match. The Special K guys, they're not bad wrestlers. They're really, really athletic. They definitely had their moments here. But I don't know. I would have preferred to see this more of a squash. But the ending was pretty cool. You got Aries and Jack Evans. Aries hitting the 450, Jack hitting the 630 splash, and then Roderick doing a backbreaker simultaneously for the finish right there. So it set a nice tone. But yeah, that would kind of go on throughout the night with, the Generation Next guys, Alex Shelley just being like, we're taking your spot. So that leads to a singles match between Alex Shelley and Hydro. This was good stuff. So Hydro is actually Jay Lethal. So he takes on Shelley here. And yeah, I mean, what this really did was it really made me think of the history that Shelley and Lethal would go on to have, especially in TNA with Kevin Nash and the Jackass stuff. And then they would team together at Lockdown. So tons of history between Shelley and Jay Lethal. At this time, Lethal was still trying to, make a name for himself. So this was good. This was a good coming out party for Lethal. Him and Shelley had a good match. You could see how good of a wrestler Lethal will become. And everyone talks about Macho Man with Lethal, but I was listening to a Lethal interview with Kevin Steen, and he talked about the first time he ever watched wrestling. The what made him want to become a wrestler was actually Chris Benoit delivering a snap suplex. So you could even see here the Chris Benoit moveset really inspiring Lethal. It was a good technical match, really, really good chain wrestling from both guys. Shelley goes over, but Lethal was so impressive that Shelley actually offered him a spot in Generation Next, but Jay Lethal politely declined. So that's pretty much how it ended right there. All right, next up we have a tag team match featuring the Carnage Crew guys. So the Carnage Crew is actually Logan DeVito with Just Incredible, taking on Danny Daniels, Trent Acid, and Masada. Really, really weird match right here. So Masada actually turns on the Carnage Crew. This is a turn that if you were not paying attention, you would barely even notice it. Thought the match was a little bit weird. Trent Acid looked good, but the match was short and sweet. Not a big fan of the Carnage Crew guys, but we move on from there. Next up, we have Nigel McGuinness taking on Jimmy Jacobs. Really, really good match. This was billed as a Generation Next match. I would assume Generation Next was supposed to be in a lot of these singles showcase matches. So this is really the only one they got done as far as the Generation Next series, which is almost like it felt like it was very similar to the Field of Honor series. But yeah, Nigel takes on Jimmy Jacobs. They were still young at the time. They're both really trying to get a start at this particular time. And, 4 years later, these would be the top two heels in Ring of Honor. Jimmy Jacobs would end up leading the Age of the Fall. Nigel was champion, going on a tear as the top heel in the company. They did wrestle in 2008, but they actually wrestled in Japan away from the American crowd. And it was good, man. Like the story there was really, really sweet because when Jimmy Jacobs actually beat Bryan Danielson, Nigel was actually making fun of Danielson for losing to Jimmy Jacobs. And Jacobs used that loss in his promo to build hype for the Nigel match. But, it was interesting that they wrestled in Japan because, there's no reaction over there. So you could get away with doing a heel versus heel match. Here, it was pretty good. Jimmy was playing the Bruiser Brody role, with the hush stuff. Nigel really reminded Gabe of Doug Williams just by his style. I mean, Jimmy put up a good fight. He kicked out of the Tower of London. He hit Nigel with the Contra Code off the top rope. But they really wrestled a sweet little match right here. But Nigel puts him away with a double wrist lock where he's putting pressure on the neck. So a very impressive performance from Nigel. And we move on from there. Next up, we got CM Punk teaming up with his best friend at the time, Colt Cabana, the Second City Saints. At this time, they're the ROH Tag Team Champions. I think they actually beat the Briscoes back at Reborn, the Reborn weekend, Reborn Stage 2 in Chicago. And they're coming off of they're coming off of defending the belts at the Round Robin Challenge 3, actually. I think that was the week before this, and they're taking on the Prophecy of B.J. Whitmer and Dan Maff. Obviously, some might remember B.J. Whitmer actually took out CM Punk's girlfriend, Lucy. She was like a little cute gothic girl. So that was one of the many girlfriends that CM Punk would have throughout the years. So you still have that going on right here. But yeah, I mean, the match is pretty good. They went about 20 minutes. It was sloppy at some points. At other points, I thought Maff looked incredible here. The story was that Maff was a little bit more engaged than Whitmer. BJ's head quite wasn't in the game right here. And it's funny, like I said, they're wrestling in a tent. So there's one part where they're brawling on the outside, and you can see them actually just, throwing each other in the chairs, and you can see the grass at the bottom of the screen. So it's just interesting. Very rarely do you see grass in a professional wrestling match. But if you're wrestling in a tent, obviously you got to set up the tent in the middle of the field. So that was interesting. But yeah, CM Punk actually goes over. He hits the Pepsi plunge on BJ Whitmer, and he's selling the knee when he comes down on the plunge. But it was a pretty cool ending. Really, really fun match right here. And there's actually a promo between BJ Whitmer and Dan Maff where Maff is telling BJ, what the hell happened out there? I'm giving this prophecy thing one more chance. And if your head's not in the game, then this prophecy thing is over. So at this time, you could definitely tell the prophecy had run its course. Daniels is not there anymore. BJ Whitmer and Dan Maff, they're kind of going their separate ways. Allison Danger, the manager at the time, is a little bit baffled that Maff has put them on notice. So that's pretty much how it ends right there. All right, next up we got the Briscoes taking on the Outcast Killers. So after intermission, you got the Briscoes doing an extended squash against the Outcast Killers with Prince Nana as their manager. Briscoes looked impressive. I thought Jay Briscoe looked awesome on this show. Just a rapid sense of urgency from him. And then we have the match that we're here for. We have one of the best matches in ROH history, one of the best matches of 2004. But you know what, man? Cage match, man. What the hell? They're forgetting another match. Okay, so there is a match supposed to take place between Jimmy Rave and John Walters, and Generation Next attack both guys. Roderick actually gives John Walters a pile driver and basically says, Shelley says, we're taking your spot. So they took them out. So then they attack the Briscoes, and Shelley says to Jay, he's like, I don't know how smart at math you are, but we're 4 and you're only 2. And then all of a sudden, Jimmy Rave and John Walters make the save, and then you got a 4-on-4 tag match. It was booked really, really good. It definitely made sense. The fans were really excited to see the Briscoes get 2 tag team partners here. And this is an impromptu match. It wasn't promoted. It was just kind of a spur of the moment thing, and ended up being great, man. So we got Generation Next of Alex Shelley, Austin Aries, Jack Evans, and Roderick Strong taking on Jimmy Rave, John Walters, and the Briscoes. They go 41 minutes and 21 seconds. I love the match, man. I thought it aged extremely well. After this was over, there were Match of the Year chants. There was ROH chants. Everything was dark here, so you couldn't see the tent. The camera angles were close and crisp. So when you watch a match like this, you wouldn't even notice that they were inside of a tent. But yeah, man, it was great stuff. And when the match actually ends, Generation X basically breaks character. There's the Code of Honor. I thought the Code of Honor was kind of weird because this definitely felt like an invasion angle with Generation Next at the time. But yeah, man, it was great. Everybody got a chance to show what they can do here. I will say this has got to be the highlight of Shelley's career. Just killer promos inside of the ring. I thought he was a technical wizard here. You could see the Dean Malenko moveset, but at the same time, Shelley and Roderick had some great double team moves together. The Roderick's backbreaker with Shelley actually doing the baseball slide combination, that was a great combination spot. So you could see Shelley's and Strong really set the tone for them becoming a tag team down the road. At this time, Aries was just very explosive. Shelley even said the most explosive wrestler in Ring of Honor. Gabe was actually comparing Aries to AJ Styles on the show. He said this is the next, he didn't want to compare him unfairly to AJ Styles, but that's who he reminded him of. But yeah, Aries was great here. This is probably the most explosive 450 he ever hit. He actually hits the 450 in the middle of the ring. So, we talk about Benoit actually doing the flying headbutt 3/4 of the way across the ring. To do a 450, you're actually kind of tucking your gut inside while you're flipping. So it's a little bit harder to do that. But considering Aries hit it in the middle of the ring, the degree of difficulty there is probably even higher than doing the headbutt and even further distance. So, yeah, Aries is just really, really good here. I mean, the only part of the match where I was just a little bit worried about Aries, he actually took a power bomb from John Walters, and he was very lucky he did not break his neck there because it did not look pretty. But yeah, at this time, man, Aries was just no nonsense, very reminiscent of Benoit from a character standpoint. Just, very reminiscent of AJ in terms of explosiveness and speed and agility. No nonsense, though. Like, he was all about just going out there and tearing it up. But little did we know, Aries would probably become the best mic worker in this group right here. Jack Evans, I'm not a huge Jack Evans fan. I would compare him to Jason Williams, the white Jason Williams, white chocolate. Very, people have called him a wigger in the past. just because of the way he acts with the breakdancing, and he's basically comes off like a white guy trying to be black. So sometimes that rubs people the wrong way. But I think what Jack did here, he was different, man. He just had an incredible moveset. He was a great high flyer. He did the breakdancing, he did the trash talking, and he just brought something really, really different to the table. So I'm not a huge Jack Evans fan, but I will agree he was perfect to be the fourth wheel of this stable right here. And then Roderick, obviously Roderick Strong, the messiah of the backbreaker. Really not a lot of mic skills at this time from Roderick. But, you could argue that Roderick never really found it on the mic, but at this time he's the solid workhorse of the group, and he was great in this match. The highlight of the match, I would probably say, is just the striking between him and Jay Briscoe. I mean, what an underrated rivalry right there. I mean, Roderick and Jay would go on to have some classics. They had opening matches at the Ric Flair show, Styling and Profiling, which is a really, really sweet opening match. And when Roderick was champion, that only the Strong Survive match between them was incredible as well. But they really, you could just see the chemistry here, just incredible stiffness between them. And I think even Mark Nolte said that it's been the highlight of the match so far, just the exchanges between Roderick and Jay Briscoe. I gotta say, Jimmy Rave looked impressive here. This is before the embassy, before the Prince Nana stuff. And once again, Jimmy was just able to show what a great wrestler he was. There was even Jimmy Rave chants. I could not believe it. Walters, Walters is hit or miss for some people. I would definitely say he's reminiscent of Steve Blackman in the personality department. And obviously he became synonymous with the Pure title. But here, I thought he was great, man. He did some great mat wrestling with Shelley, but at the same time, he gave Aries that nasty looking suplex. He did the gut busters to the knees. Just a lot of good stuff from John Walters all around. So a great showing from him. This might have ended up being the highlight of his career, along with some of the matches that he had against Xavier, that fight with the honor with Xavier. But this is probably the best match he was ever involved with, I'd have to say. And the Briscoes, this isn't the prime Briscoes, but, they're very young at the time. They're hungry. And, I just thought Jay and Mark, this was just a great showcase from them. And, the ending actually was pretty good, man. Shelley actually makes Walters submit to the Border City stretch, and there's just a lot of anticipation for the tap out. Aries actually prevents it from being broken up by delivering a submission of his own, and the fans were actually really, really in to the tap out right there. So Shelley actually gets the victory, gets the tap out. And they get a standing ovation. They get match of the year chance, ROH chance. The match is just really, really good. It's long and it's just really, really good. Everybody just brought it. Everybody busted their ass like it was an opportunity of a lifetime. It's got to be one of the best, if not the best. Just throwing together impromptu tag matches, 8-man. Maybe one of the best 8-man tags that's ever been thrown together in ROH history. So, definitely the match of the night, and definitely a dark horse for one of the best matches that Ring of Honor would have in 2004. Okay, next up we have a confrontation between CM Punk and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Okay, so Punk comes out with his AFI theme. When he came out with Cabana, he was coming out with the Colt Cabana theme. You just love that AFI theme. But, I just don't think it really worked at Revolution because, it just felt like most people in the crowd were not exposed to the early days of Ring of Honor. But this is the most animated I've seen Punk get into it with a fan. So this one guy, he starts yelling at Punk. He's like, fuck you, Punk, you're Steamboat's bitch. Fuck you. And then Punk just gets right in his face. It was pretty cool. It was like, be a man. He's like, you want to be a tough guy? Be a man. And for a whole minute, he's just yelling at him, be a man. And the guy's just like, fuck. The guy's like, just fuck you, Steamboat's bitch. So at this time in 2004, I would imagine this guy grew up being a Steamboat fan when he was a kid. we're only, 17 years removed from WrestleMania 3. All right, so Ricky the Dragon Steamboat comes out. And, I thought the segment was a little bit forced. It did not feel natural. I think more than anything, I think what Generation Next did, it really opened the door for CM Punk to turn babyface. And ultimately, this show, along with Generation Next and the Punk face turn, I think it really got Ring of Honor going in a positive direction, in a profitable direction. So I think more than anything, this show is a real historical landmark because of that. Now, I mean, the Punk and Steamboat stuff, it was good. Punk was saying he respects Steamboat, but, it's 2004 and, what have you done for me lately? And, you look like you're 115 years old. So he's making fun of Steamboat for being bald and gray. I don't know. It just it didn't feel like Punk's heart was really in it. I just preferred this segment where Punk's, saved Ricky Steamboat. That felt a little bit more organic. When he started beating down Steamboat, it didn't really get any heat. It just got, I don't know. It just felt a little bit forced. But, you had Steamboat fight back and chop Punk, and they did some of the spots at WrestleMania 3 with the choke, and then Cabana comes out, and there's actually a ring bell shot off the top rope to Steamboat, which obviously, George the Animal Steel at WrestleMania 3 with the, I believe that was actually the ending. So they did that there. But yeah, man, it was a really, really good confrontation between Punk and Steamboat. But the highlight ended up being just Punk getting into it with the fan. That really didn't happen that much in Ring of Honor. Like from what I remember with the Punk documentary, that seemed to go on a little bit more before he got to ROH, like in the Midwest, maybe IWA Mid-South. But yeah, man, it was a really, really good confrontation right there. And then the main event. This is a relaxed rules match for the ROH World title. I would say probably the most underrated Samoa Joe and Homicide match. Yeah, I mean, when you think of this show, you don't really think of Joe and Homicide. I think the Generation Next stuff really overshadowed it. It seemed like Joe and Homicide's matches at Do or Die and Death Before Dishonor, and even their Reborn match, got a little bit more publicity because of, what went on there. So Joe actually took Homicide was actually the favorite going into this match because, he basically should have won the match at Reborn, and then he got pissed off and he shot a fireball in Joe's eye. So that, with the combination of Joe being 14-month champion and wearing down, Gabe was saying that Homicide is actually the favorite here. I don't know if I would agree with that at the time, but that's what they were trying to sell the match as. Match was good. I thought it was intense. This is really the only time they got the main event, during this time. I think they did get the main event of Do or Die, and their 2007 stuff, especially Joe's Farewell, that got the main event. But out of their 2004 stuff, this is the only match from the trilogy. I think that got the main event. So it's a little bit weird. It's weird seeing all the streamers out there. When Joe came out, there's like a shitload of streamers before the match starts. So you have that going on there. That definitely made it memorable. But yeah, Homicide here just came out with Reckless Abandon. He's just very aggressive, very Abdullah the Butcher inspired with the fork, going after Joe's face. But yeah, just really, really intense stuff. Very similar to all their other matches. They just have a mutual understanding and a good chemistry here. Trying to think of what stood out here. Very stiff lariats from Homicide with Joe kicking out of everything. There was a counter to a muscle buster that was kind of weird. It looked like Homicide was going to counter the muscle buster, and it looked like Joe did the, almost like an inverted Falcon Arrow. It looked like the move was actually on Homicide, but, Joe was selling that he hurt his wrist. And Homicide, it looked like Homicide took the move, but, Joe got the brunt of it. I don't know if they really hit it that well. I don't think it came off that well. But like I was saying, guys, Homicide, had the fork, was really butchering Joe's face with the fork, so Joe got all bloody. So it was a pretty nasty war, and it just featured, you know, Joe just trying to survive. Joe trying to survive by just hitting lariat after lariat. He hit the island driver. He actually beat Homicide with the island driver later on at Death Before Dishonor. But Homicide kicks out of the island driver, and after all the damage to Homicide's head, he actually stays down from a brainbuster. So, you know, Gabe even said kind of an anticlimactic finish, but they wanted to tell the story of Joe just surviving this animal that Homicide is, this ball of fire that Homicide is. And it's funny, after the match was over, Homicide got a standing ovation, and then he's shitting on the fans. He's just like, shut the fuck up, I don't need your support, shut the fuck up. So it was pretty funny. I think, you know, they really wanted to try to get Homicide over as a heel at this time. It's tough to do that. It's tough to do that with Joe just being such a monstrous, you know, overachiever, and then having the heel being this smaller, you know, entertaining, you know, ball of fire that Homicide is. It's a tough dynamic, but they pulled it off. So it's a unique match. It's probably the most underrated, you know, Samoa Joe Homicide match. It's not their best match. I think their match at Do or Die and Death Before Dishonor is a little bit better than this, but this still blows away some of their later matches. So it's a good match, definitely overshadowed by Generation Next and, you know, the 8-man tag and everything that went down at this show. But yeah, that's Generation Next. This is, to me, this is a essential Ring of Honor classic show. The reason I decided to review it, someone's been asking me to review Generation Now for like the last year. And, you know, eventually I'll get to it. You know, Generation Now is when Matt Sydal actually replaced Alex Shelley, and Generation Next was actually Babyfaces at that time. That was in July of 2006, which actually might be a better show. I think that was Bryan and Nigel and the rematch from Cleveland. The rematch to their first match in Cleveland from Weekend of Champions. But, yeah, but before you could review Generation Now, you had to start with Generation Next. So hopefully the reaction for this should be a little bit interesting, because, you know, it's not just some random ROH show like Take No Prisoners was from 2009. That was their last tape pay-per-view. This is a real change in direction here with this stable. So it should be really interesting to see the reaction here. But I hope everybody enjoyed the video. If anyone wants to recommend, you know, an ROH classic review, there's still like a lot of great ROH shows that haven't gotten their own review yet. Like Epic Encounter, At Our Best. Someone requested that with, you know, Jay Briscoe and Samoa Joe's best match. The Final Showdown, the original Best in the World from 2006. So there's still a lot of, you know, really great ROH classics. And I know, like, you know, this isn't the heyday for ROH, and, you know, some of the fans that, you know, might have seen these shows, maybe they're just too old to be on YouTube at this point, but I really don't care. I still really enjoy going back to the old school Ring of Honor stuff. It's still my favorite stuff to do, even though I know it's not, you know, the most popular stuff. But yeah, hope everyone enjoyed the video. Generation Next, the highlight of Alex Shelley's career, arguably. And I'm out. All right.